and digesting the fakes, because they know that we'll love how synthetic it tastes. Watch as they edit your features without any trace. Not that there's anything you could do anyway. Now watch as they show you a movie you saying shit you would never say. Dystopia boldly accelerates. Maybe you're only a mold, something to fill with a clone, something that Elon would celebrate. Something they own, something they program and code, something that's woefully able to know it's exanimate. Cause it doesn't feel touch over top of the laminate. You will not feel an emotion, but they will not scan and examine it. You and the other consumer contaminants fed on the federal diet of Kiev, Havana, and Tiananmen. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment. Where did you think we'd go? Love, there's nowhere to lie. Guess it's not who you know, more it's what you can hide. Like we're chained to the floor, they're streaming us live while we're watching the war, counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards. False alarm. I thought that help was here. But it was my own reassurance bouncing round 100,000 times in my own ecosphere. If every time you speak you keep it off the record, consequently you can keep your record clear. And if you mute the speech that shakes your frail beliefs, you only seek to insulate your image and continue down the stream in the direction clout and credit steers. Directly from your mouth into am I the asshole Reddit's ears. Directly back into the greasy pockets of some Gates Foundation financiers. And then directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. Half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear, but that was back before the basosphere condenser came along, distilling concentrated fear that's diamond pure, crystal clear, oppressor strong, and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear. And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the shears, begging for the muzzle, happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. Man, to each his own, can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere. Where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink 'em twice. Welcome to your ecosphere.
If a hospital's in need of more PPE, there's no reason that they can't buy it. It's a business owner's call if they choose to enforce mask use to stay compliant. You know, a lot of deaths are vitamin deficiency related, so they probably had a poor diet. It's a lot like the flu, but the media's conspiring to keep that quiet.
The sheep goes.
You won't catch me on the CDC site catching up on guidelines. I'll be choosing faith over science. I'll be at the beach if you need me, but 6 sharp gotta get home from my 2 grand Zoom call live with the Bidens. At the end they ask the middle class, leave the room a moment while they lay bare the next phase of unrestrained police violence. And
The sheep goes.
silent. They say no man is an island. But when you're drowning all alone, then it clicks that you either were one of us castaways crafting a signal or one of the many oblivious pilots. And we could burn every poem we can find, but they won't ever open their eyes, 'cause they fly over right around 5 when the sun fights right through your eyelids. So it's just a long, slow trail of goodbye left behind as the orange turns violet. So it's just a long, slow trail of goodbye left behind as the orange turns violet. So it's just a long, slow trail of goodbye left behind as the orange turns violet. So it's just a long, slow trail of goodbye left behind as the orange turns violet. So it's just a long, slow trail of goodbye left behind as the orange turns violet. So it's just a long, slow trail of goodbye left behind as the orange turns violet.
You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your head. Why play civil when you won't listen to 100,000 dead? And now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison. So why play civil when all these dead won't make you listen? Won't make you listen. Make you listen. Make you listen. Make you listen. You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen to 50,000 dead? Now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison. Why play civil when all these dead won't make you listen? What's more American than slaying your oppressors? What's more American than liberty or death first? Man, I thought we were founded on abolishing the tyranny of those who would starve a village all to live empirically. And I regret that I have only one life to give for my cause, now that I can see the cause so clearly. I want our leaders, regardless of party, to fear me. I will pick my targets and assassinate them lyrically. I will bring a mountain to the town square, hook them to the pillory and leave them there. Hillary, I'll see you there. Hillary, I'll see you there. You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen to 50,000 dead? Now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison. Why play civil when all these dead won't make you listen? Welcome to the fantasy of rhetoric. Welcome to the last of the free speech while we can get it. And I promise you can get it. All you corporate Democrats, second wave Confederates, GOP illusionists, and neo-Nazi bureaucrats. And Stephen fucking Miller, I will see you in the aftermath. When all the laws are dust, there's just moral justice after that. And I will hunt you through the wasteland if it comes to that. So I can rub you in the dirt like a cheap human Brillo pad. I can sleep fine when our beds are burning, Stephen, but I'll turn around and run into the blaze to get my pillow back. As long as I can lay my head down, I can live with that. I can deal with a little ash. I can feel like a little of the old me burn with the bad and the rest of my past. The old world where we all lived and we can't get back. The old world where you didn't give and you'd still get back. Where you could rake in 12 billion and give none back. Those days are behind us, the virus will kill all that. Your wealth is behind us and kindness is meant for the past. Our leaders would bind us and starve us and call it a fast. A sacrament meant for their God that they garnish in cash. And they feed it the poor by the hundreds, that's all that it asks. Its hunger is legion and people in need are all it will have. So our only chance is to starve it and hope that it turns on them.
You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your hands. Can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your hands.
Our society and our world are full of these invented and built up and contrived facades. And sometimes some people come along with a hammer and smash that facade. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade.
Welcome to the future. Shit where you please. The Wi-Fi's killer, but there's no more bees. So there's hardly any flowers, there are very few trees, and you'll pay $1,000 for some honey for your tea. But we got these awesome collars, mine's an Apple Model 3. It allows for better movement than the Tesla X Elite. It lets you customize the ads that it implants in every dream. And for premium subscribers, doesn't shock you in your sleep. But it doesn't stop there. It can analyze your speech, and if it hears disinformation, then it notifies police. It's a swift re-education, but it knocks you off your feet like your booster every 7th week. I faced the future boldly with 2 eager open eyes, and I picked a couple nuggets up that blew my fucking mind. Like you can taxidermy someone while they're technically alive, and they'll shine when it's election time. See, the Democratic voter base will pay them zero. Never mind if voting for the scarecrow is a vote along their party lines. They could stare into its marble eyes and claim there's something dignified. Unlike real politicians, this one doesn't need an oxygen or kit supply. But its function is the same as those who came before. The goals are never misaligned. It still spends all its working time performing pre-recorded fleecing sessions where it sugarcoats your slow and hungry genocide, while pouring billions into Nazi coffers, all the while selling you the story that we're moments till the MiGs arrive. So fuck it, ask Zelensky if he'll help replace our leaded pipes. Watch a fleet of Penske's show stacks of bills in every size. Guess it only took a black sun and a couple Heils. Honorary goose step and some Nazi boots a quarter mile, all while Biden sneers his sordid smile. I don't know what was in this morning's vial, but it makes him stare 1,000 yards through all the prompters and the cards like he can smell the nearest child. His eyes are wide and wild, wider than the grave in which another 1,000 families were tossed in as I typed until they rose up to the sky unceremoniously piled. which sort of flies right in the face of all this network ticker tape where the American economy has superhuman vitals.
And sometimes some people come along with a hammer.
See, I like to think my trial's gonna play like a recital. I'll denounce the world around me and accuse the most entitled, who weaponize their titles, whose pull is something tidal, who'd starve us all to death to best delight their blighted idol. So they might destroy the record, and I will never get to vinyl. So my word is not immortal, but it's final.
It's a brilliant, powerful hammer. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade.
Born in the shadows of graves, dug for the victims of war or the bodies of negligent poverty, labeled as either essential or brave. We had to watch them lay old Lady Liberty down on the lathe, shave all her salient features away. 'Cause we like our women condemned, we like our women contained, we like our platitudes flaccid and vague, and we like to deify people objectively late for the Hague. We like our senators boneless, because we've only elected the spineless, who all lack backbone and possibly teeth, because they don't bite back and they don't speak up. They resign like sheep into silence. I don't have much hope when the meek all inherit the planet, because they fumbled the House and the Senate and handed the reins to the people they spent 4 years all proclaiming as baseless, corrupted upholders of bigotry, leeching our taxes like bandits. When all of our leaders are wearing that standard, all of them work for the global...
Have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good? And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously, we're fucked. We are fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, doing good. How are you guys doing?
And as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Pam?
Cheers and salutations. Welcome if you got them. But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
No. The issues that we talk about, listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
INN News.
No.
Wednesday, my dude.
That one. We're back.
That's the first.
That's old Tara intro, I think. That's still on my soundboard.
Okay.
Anyway, it's Wednesday, everybody. It's INN News. It's me, Reef, with my co-host, as always, Collin Radix-Carter, a.k.a. Care Bear. Care Bear, how are you?
Yes, sir.
Things are broken.
I'm good. Sorry. Well, tech issues on my end. My internet was spotty, meaning it was cutting out. So I didn't want to have it cut out during the stream, so I rebooted my router, and then our slideshow thing is not working now.
Yeah.
So Reef has to do extra work tonight. and move the slideshow during my segments.
Yay.
But that's okay because he had a week off. Well, kind of a week off last week. Shout out to Fiorella Isabel for the interview. She is willing to give up her time to that she did with us last week, which premiered last Wednesday. So a lot of you watched. So thank you so much for that, and send all your love to Fee and let her know that you know what you liked about it. So we definitely appreciate her coming on. But yeah, we're back. I was out of the country last week. That's why we got Fee on. I think there's still an echo. Again, yeah.
Why? We're not allowed to do that. No. I'll work on that in a second. Hold on. Remote for slides. But yeah, I don't have anything that should be echoing it back.
Well, it's not echoing now, but it was just now. So
okay, just push this back a little. Probably would help. Anyway, we brought stories. We did do that. Let's pull those up. So what'd you bring?
So Fee kind of talked about this when we interviewed her last week, but we asked her what she thinks regarding the unilateral world order that that people are kind of tuning as the way of the future. And we've also kind of talked about it a little bit on this show in regards to BRICS in particular. We have our concerns. So you brought an article from Jeffrey Sachs talking about the pros of it. I happen to bring that you also found. I forgot her name off the top. Cornelia from Consortium News also brought like kind of a pro-anti thing. So we're gonna look at both articles and kind of discuss them a little bit. That will be first on the docket. Later on tonight, and I am going to be very transparent. I do not know a lot about what's going on regarding this story in terms of potentially. Well, first of all, did you guys know that there is I wouldn't even say country because it's not even official like that, but like Somaliland just kind of annexed itself from Somalia, is potentially being looked at as the next place where the West and Israel is trying to send people from Gaza to. So sure, no one has kind of talked about this. And like I said, I don't know a lot about it, but I thought it was kind of interesting just given the politics of it all, and especially what Trump is kind of showing that he wants to make like a Gaza logo, some bullshit like that, in terms of immigrating current Gazians who are still alive somewhere else. So so we're going to look into that a little bit later, and then I do have a story that I'll do at the end, just a quick react in regards to this kind of story. Kind of went under the radar severely, but another Palestinian-American teen was martyred in the West Bank a couple of weeks ago. So he grew up in Jersey, actually near Indy's neighborhood. So shout out to Indy. So I am going to talk about that a little bit, given I think it barely got any press mainstream, and I don't think anyone in an independent space talked about that story. So I'll do that last. That's going to be our extra story tonight. And what did you bring? You had some trouble this week.
Yeah.
I took one that you wanted to do.
There just wasn't that many great articles. But I have a twofer, a little double feature on people facing prison time for Palestine. So we're going to cover those two people. And we talked not that long ago about Palestinian medics from the Red Crescent when they were brutally murdered. And I brought Eva Bartlett telling us all that this is not new policy from Israel. This has been a thing for them. So we're going to go back in time and check out those atrocities. But that's what I brought. So hopefully everything's working. Hopefully audio's better now. We'll see. People will tell me. But anyway, you ready to get started? I'm ready.
Yeah, but before we do, first of all, gotta give shout to you guys. We are currently at 2,400 on the channel. So we need 100 more to get to 25. So, so thank you guys very much for your subbing and, sharing our content, that people are seeing us and subscribing to us very slowly. So we definitely want to hit that benchmark. Maybe by the end of May, perhaps. That would be kind of nice to hit that milestone. But it's not going to be easy because YouTube hates us in terms of what we report is not favorable to the algorithm nor to their AdSense. So we are demonetized on the channel. So the only way that you can help us financially, if you choose to, is through Ko-fi. That's our main spot where if you want to donate, you can do so if you scan the QR code that you see on your screen there, or you can go to the link that you see at the bottom of the screen there, type that in. If you're in the YouTube chat, you don't remember the link, type in !donate, all one word. The link will pop up. You click on it. You'll go to our Ko-fi page. And lo and behold, you can donate there. Anything as low as $1 will help. Obviously, we know, and I say this every week, times are rough. Please take care of yourselves, your families, your communities, and yourselves before you give to us. That being said, you have a little extra to kind of pay our bills, mostly to pay for the programming that we need in order to run the show and other shows on the network. That's where your money is going to, or at least subsidizing that we're not paying so much out of pocket for the programs that we pay for and the subscriptions that we pay for in order to do all of this. And any amount you give, you end up on our Wall of Fame, which is very cool. We want to see more names on the boards. But thank you very much. A lot of you give generously every week, so we really do appreciate you guys in doing that. If you do not want to give through Ko-fi, we do have CashApp, PayPal, and Substack that you can also donate to, especially if you're looking to give monthly through Substack. That will probably be the best way and most recommended way we ask you to do that. And then you'll be subscribed to our newsletter that Indy sends every day of what we produce and then other articles that might be of interest to you all. All those links will be in the description below if you're interested in giving in those other ways. But if you want to see your message on the screen, for now at least, Ko-fi is the main bitch. So, but yeah.
To our first one.
To our first one. So, first story of tonight. Shout out to Fiorella Isabel, because she talked about this a little bit in regards to the new national order. We've talked about this on the show in the past, given, the rise of BRICS. Everyone's kind of excited about BRICS as far as a potential competitor against the West or moving away from the West. But we've had concerns about BRICS, and we've kind of had concerns about the multilateral world order that people are kind of toning as I said earlier, the wave of the future. You brought this article as I was prepping 2 nights ago. So this is from Jeffrey Sachs, where he posted on ScheerPost other news, where he writes about giving birth to the new national order. So basically, we're going to read pros and cons from him and Cornelia Bernard from Consortium. So we're going to hear both sides, and we'll kind of discuss it here. Let us know in the chat what you guys think about all of this. So as far as the pros, Jeff writes, actually, you know what? Let me go to my other screen here.
Which and we'll get to it in a bit, but he definitely is not like he definitely sees some issues as well, which is interesting. But you'll get into it as you read.
Yeah. Writing in his cell as political prisoner in fascist Italy after World War I, the philosopher Antonio Gramsci famously declared, "The crisis consists precisely in the fact that the old is dying and the new cannot be born. In this interim, a great variety of morbid symptoms appear. A century later, we are in another interim, and the morbid symptoms are everywhere. The US-led order has ended, but the multipolar world is not yet born. The urgent priority is to give birth to a new multilateral order that can keep the peace and the path to sustainable development. We are at the end of a long wave of human history that commenced with the voyages of Christopher Columbus and Vasco da Gama more than 500 years ago. Those voyages initiated more than 4 centuries of European imperialism that peaked with Britain's global dominance from the end of the Napoleonic Wars, 1815, to the outbreak of World War I, 1914. Following World War II, the US claimed the mantle as the world's new hegemon. Asia was pushed aside during this long period. According to widely used macroeconomics estimates, Asia produced 65% of world output in 1500, but by 1950, that share had declined to just 19%, compared with 55% of the world population. In the 80 years since World War II, Asia recovered its place in the global economy. Japan led the way with rapid growth in the 1950s and 60s, followed by the 4 Asian tigers, Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, and Korea, beginning in the 1960s and 1970s, and then by China beginning around 1980, and India beginning around 1990. As of today, Asia constitutes around 50% of the world economy, according to IMF estimates. The multipolar world will be born when the geopolitical weight of Africa, Asia, and Latin America matches their rising economic weight. This needed shift in geopolitics has been delayed as the US and Europe cling to outdated prerogatives built into international institutions and to their outdated mindsets. Even today, the US bullies Canada, Greenland, Panama, and others in the Western Hemisphere and threatens the rest of the world with unilateral tariffs and sanctions that are blatantly in violation of international rules. Asia, Africa, and Latin America need to stick together to raise their collective voice and the UN votes to usher in a new and fair international system. A crucial institution in need of reform is the UN Security Council, given its unique responsibility under the UN Charter to keep the peace. The 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, the P5, Britain, China, France, Russia, and the United States, reflect the world of 1945, not of 2025. There are no permanent Latin America or African seats, and Asia holds only 1 permanent seat of the 5, despite being home to almost 60% of the world population. Over the years, many new potential U.S. Security Council permanent members have been proposed, but the existing P5 have held firmly to their privileged position. The proper restructuring of the UN Security Council will be frustrated for years to come. Yet there is one crucial change that is within immediate reach, and that would serve the entire world. By any metric, India disputedly merits a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. Given India's outstanding track record in global democracy, its admission to UN Security Council would also elevate a crucial voice for world peace and justice. On all counts, India is a great power. India is the world's most populous country, having overtaken China in 2024. India is the world's 3rd largest economy measured at international prices, purchasing power parity, at $17 trillion, behind China, $40 trillion, and the United States, $30 trillion, and ahead of all the rest. India is the fastest growing major economy in the world, with annual growth at around 6% per year. India's GPD is likely to overtake that of the US by mid-century. India is a nuclear-armed nation, a digital technology innovator, and a country with a leading space program. No other country mentioned as candidate for a permanent UN Security Council member comes close to India's credentials for a seat. The same can be said about India's diplomatic heft. India's skillful democracy was displayed by India's superb leadership of the G20 in 2023. India defiantly managed a hugely successful G20 despite the bitter divide in 2024 between Russia and the NATO countries. We did talk about
which we covered, and we didn't like a lot of what happened there.
No, about a couple years ago. Right.
Wasn't this where India literally hid their pores behind curtains?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just making sure.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
But then again, every country has done that in terms of any.
Well, it's like the Olympics and
like Olympics, right?
Yeah. Very much.
Not only did India achieve a G20 consensus, it made history by welcoming the African Union to a new permanent membership in the G20. China has dragged its feet on supporting India's permanent seat in the UN Security Council, guarding its own unique position as the only Asian power in the P5. Yet China's vital national interests would be well served and bolstered by India's ascension to a permanent UN Security Council seat. This is especially the case given that the US is carrying out a last-ditch and vicious effort through tariffs and sanctions to block China's hard-earned rise in economic prosperity and technological prowess. By supporting India for the UN Security Council, China would establish decisively that geopolitics are being remade to reflect the true multipolar world. While China would create an Asian peer in the UN Security Council, it would also win a vital partner in overcoming the US and European resistance to geopolitical change. If China calls for India's permanent membership in the UN Security Council, Russia will immediately concur, while the US, UK, and France will vote for India as well. The US geopolitical tantrums of recent weeks, abandoning the fight against climate change, attacking the Sustainable Development Goals, and imposing unilateral tariffs in contravention of core WTO rules, reflect the truly morbid symptoms of a dying old order. It's time to make way for a truly multipolar and just international order. Thoughts, Reef?
I mean, I think he's got a bunch of points that we haven't gotten there yet, right? You know,
in terms of
a multipolar world that hasn't actually cemented itself. But yeah, I mean, we talked about India, especially with that G20 thing. So go back and find that video in our archives. But yeah, I figured we should bring that, seeing as how your next article that you brought is actually responding to Jeffrey Sachs, right?
Right.
So, and this is Ahsoka Bandaraj that Corinne Bernard is putting in for them, I do believe.
Yeah, I do believe, yes. So this is kind of more the con of a new international order, where Ahsoka Bandaraj writes, progressive support of a multilateral world often ignores how much the emerging new world is similar to the old one, a point also missed by Jeffrey Sachs in speaking of a new international order, writes Ahsoka Bandaraj. Will a peaceful and sustainable multipolar world be born when rising economic weight of emerging economies is matched with a rising geopolitical weight, as argued by renowned economist Jeffrey Sachs in his recent Other News article? There is no question that as the US-led world order collapses, a new multipolar world can foster peace and sustainable development is urgently needed. BRICS was established to promote the interests of emerging economies by challenging the economic institutions dominated by the West and the supremacy of the US dollar in international trade. Asia alone constitutes around 50% of the world's gross domestic product, or GDP, today. China is expected to become the world's leading economy, and India, the world's third largest economy by 2030. But does economic growth alone reflect improvement in the quality of life of the vast majority of people? And should it continue to be the central criteria of a new international order? Unfortunately, BRICS appears to be replicating the same patterns of domination and subordination in its relations with smaller nations that characterize traditional imperial powers. Whether the world is unipolar or multipolar, the continuation of a dominant global economy and financial system based on competitive technological and capitalistic growth and environmental, social, and cultural destruction will fundamentally not change the world and the disastrous trajectory we are on. Despite many progressives investing hope in the emerging multipolarity, there is a deep systemic bias that fails to recognize that the emerging economies are pursuing the same economic model as the West, which is what we have talked about with BRICS before.
Yeah.
Especially given that they're trying to model themselves under like the IDF.
World Bank.
Yeah, World Bank. I said
Yeah.
IDF, but you know where my mind is at. So, well, I know where my mind is at with that because I'm going to be talking about that a little bit. This means we will continue to live in a world that prioritizes unregulated transnational corporate growth and profit over environmental sustainability and social justice. China Communications Construction Company and the Adani Group are just two examples of controversial Chinese and Indian conglomerates reflecting this destructive continuity. Despite, not going to read that, not sure why I put that in there. Is India, as Professor Sachs says, providing skillful diplomacy and superb leadership in international affairs? Look, for example, at India's advancing vision of a greater India, Akhand Bharat, and behavior towards its neighboring countries. Are these not strikingly similar to U.S. strategies of hegemonic interference? While India promotes its trade and infrastructure projects as enhancing regional security and welfare, experiences in Nepal demonstrate how Indian trade blockades and electricity grid integration with India have made Nepal dependent on and subordinate to India in meeting its basic needs and consumer needs. Similarly, Bangladesh's electric agreement with the Adani Group has created a situation allowing Adani to cut power supply to Bangladeshi consumers. Since the fall of the Sheikh Hasina regime in Bangladesh, there has been a widespread demands to cancel the deal with Adani, which is seen as unequal and harmful to Bangladesh. Similarly, recent agreements have made with Sri Lanka, which expand India's energy colonialism and overall political, economic, and cultural dominance, threatening Sri Lanka's national security, sovereignty, and identity. During Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Sri Lanka from April 4 through 6, according to reports in the Indian media, some 7 to 10 agreements were signed to strengthen ties in defense, electricity grid interconnection, multi-product petroleum pipeline, digital transformation, and pharmaceutical practices between the two countries. The agreements have been signed by using Sri Lankan presidential power without debate or approval of the Sri Lankan parliament. The secrecy surrounding the agreements is such that both the Sri Lankan public and media still do not know how many pacts were made, their full contents, of whether the documents were signed, are legally binding agreements, or simply memoranda of understanding, MOUs, which can be revoked. The new 5-year Indo-Lanka Defense Cooperation Agreement is meant to ensure that Sri Lankan territory will not be used in any manner that can threaten India's national security interests, and it formally guarantees that Sri Lanka does not allow any third power to use its soil against India.
Sure.
While India has framed the pact as part of its broader Neighborhood East policy and vision Madagascar, Great Ocean, to check the growing influence of China and the Indian Ocean region has raised much concern and debate in Sri Lanka. As a member of the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, Quad, a strategic alliance against Chinese expansion that includes the United States, Australia, and Japan, India participates in extensive Quad military exercises like the Malabar exercises in the Indian Ocean. In 2016, the United States designated India as a major defense partner, and in 2024, then Senator Marco Rubio, the current U.S. Secretary of State, introduced a bill in U.S. Congress to grant India a status similar to NATO countries. In February, during a visit to the U.S. by Modi, India and U.S. entered into a 10-year defense partnership to transfer technology, expand cooperation of arms, and strengthen military interoperability. Does this sound like a start of a new model of geopolitics and economics? What we see today is not the emergence of a truly multipolar or just international order, but continued imperialism expansion with local collaboration. Sri Lankan analysts are also pointing out that with the signing of the defense agreement with India, there is a very real danger of Sri Lanka being dragged into the Quad through the back door as a subordinate of India. They point out that Sri Lanka could be made a victim in the US-led Indo-Pacific strategy, compromising its long-held, non-aligned status and close relationship with China, a major investor, trade partner, and supporter of Sri Lanka in international forums. The US and its Quad partner India, as well as China and other powerful countries, want control over Sri Lanka due to its strategic location in the maritime trade routes of the Indian Ocean. But Sri Lanka, which is not currently engaged in any conflict with an external actor, has no need to sign any defense agreements. The defense MOU with India represents further militarization of the Indian Ocean, as well as a violation of the 1971 UN Declaration of the Indian Ocean as a zone of peace and the principles of non-alignment, which both India and Sri Lanka have supported in the past. Professor Sachs, who attended the Rising Bharat conference on April 8th through 9th in New Delhi, has called for India to be given a seat as a permanent member in the UN Security Council, gushing that no other country mentioned as a candidate comes close to India's credentials for a seat. But would this truly represent a move towards a new international order, or would it simply bring a mutation of this existing paradigm of domination and subordination and geopolitical weight being equated with economic weight, i.e., might is right? Instead, the birth of a multipolar world requires the right of countries, especially small countries like India's neighbors, to remain non-aligned amidst the worsening of geopolitical polarization of the new Cold War. What we see today is not the emergence of a truly multipolar and just international order, but continued imperialism expansion with local collaboration prioritizing short-term profit and self-interest over collective warfare, leading to environmental and social destruction. So to conclude, breaking free from this exploitative world order requires fundamentally reimagining global economic and social systems to uphold harmony and equality. It calls on people everywhere to stand up for their rights, speak up, and uplift each other. In its global transformation, India, China, and the newly emergent economies have significant roles to play. As nations that have endured centuries of Western imperial domination, their mission should be to lead the global struggle of demilitarization and the creation of an ecological and equitable human civilization, rather than dragging smaller countries into a new world war. So, kind of long-winded, but essentially, I think honestly brought up more concerns that we probably didn't necessarily bring up. But I think what we said, I think the base of it is, especially with BRICS, is that they're using Western tactics essentially to make the case for themselves, which is not exactly what they should be doing. You should be trying to move away from the rest, not copy paste their practices for your own means. And then
it's also a factor of like a lot of these countries, China and India specifically, Brazil too. Oh, thanks, Sean. Appreciate you. Always appreciating us with monies. So he just takes some gold off the stack he has and throws it our way. But India, China, Brazil, specifically when it comes to BRICS, still have ties to the West, which I think is what's being brought up here too, of like, and Israel, specifically when it comes to India and Brazil.
Right.
So,
and we're going to get we're gonna get into Brazil, not Brazil, Israel later
Yeah.
in terms of what's happening in Somaliland and I think again, I don't know a lot about Somaliland, but just given what I briefly learned,
Yeah.
but you can kind of guess given we'll see like once we get into it. But given like Sri Lanka is also very strategic, you can guess where, which obviously brings a lot of interest to Israel and the West currently. So
Well, and Fee
it's
brought
just
up
the idea.
last week
Go ahead.
about the non-aligned axis needs to be more aligned, you know, and that's also a problem with this too, is that you got all these countries with feet on both sides of the fire here, you know, that they're still wanting to interact with the United States economically and militarily, while also being part of this non-aligned axis to where they can't actually join up and compete against the Western powers necessarily either. You know, especially when it comes to places like Iran and Syria and Lebanon and that kind of situation. So, you know, all those countries have had sympathetic ties to Israel.
Where is Africa in all of this? That's kind of that like they talk about Asia frequently and it makes sense, but Africa also like has kind of been undermined in all of this. Like, just they have a lot of resources too, which everyone and their mother is taking, but no acknowledgement of what Africans can actually do for themselves in order to elevate themselves in the economic prosperity, given this rising multipolar world. But it's all basically Asia, where yes, I understand as far as the tech and all of that, but a lot of the raw materials that like the Chinese are using, especially for compute, like a lot of tech, are coming from Africa. So that was just kind of a shame that even in this, that Africa wasn't mentioned in this conversation at all.
Sachs mentioned it more than Sachs was like, they're not getting a seat at all, in anything. So
So how is it that someone like India, granted they're a subcontinent, but Africa that's much bigger doesn't get,
because of their resource output, like specifically their GDP and their profit margins. That's what's being looked at, which is what was brought up in that second article, is like, is that even worth looking at anymore?
Right.
Because that just essentially says who can exploit people better. So, which.
But yeah, at the end of the day, I think just the overall thing that kind of why I wanted to bring up the article that I brought and then yours, it talks mostly about, all this talk is basically about corporations and, political people in terms of how this new world essentially will be set up. How do working class people in these countries and in these regions of the world benefit? They don't. It's just going to be more of the same, if not worse, of what they're going through right now. So in my mind,
I think that's been part of the argument of like that we're no different than you, like Russia, China, whatever. It's like, if anything, we're doing what you do better, and we're making better friends and allies anyway. So at some point, you're going to have to deal with us as a world power, which they already have been doing. So, and she said something like, we don't want to start a new Cold War. Like, no, we've been in that. We've been in a Cold War for a minute. So, but yeah, I mean, this is all based off things like the World Bank and stuff like that. So, it's definitely something to be cautious of, if anything. So, but anything else? Anything else you want to add?
I mean, I think again, it's worth listening to our interview with Fee, because she talked about this a little bit more in depth and just her concerns as well. So that's why I also kind of brought it. I thought it was a great supplement to what Fee was saying to us, or kind of what her observation is
Yeah.
when we spoke to her last week. So go check out that interview if you haven't. But talking about stories like these are why we're demonetized. So if you want to help us, like Sean just did early in this segment, you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen, or you can go to the Ko-fi link that you see in the bottom of your screen, or if you go to our description, you can donate to PayPal, Substack, and what's the third one? Cash App. There we go.
It's all
If
in
you
the
want to
doobly-doo.
donate to us,
Right down there.
But if you want to see your thing on screen, then let us know. And actually, we should talk about this a little bit more. I think we kind of talked about the idea of, gifting people maybe after a certain amount, like their choice of a soundboard thing,
Yeah.
I guess. So I think maybe Sean should be among the first since he gives
For sure.
consistently. So, but we'll talk about that and we kind of more formalize that at some point. But actually, I think you guys kind of came up with that idea, which I think was, I think, a very good idea. But
Yeah.
anyway, regardless. So yeah, if you want to help us out financially, please do that. Otherwise, we know a lot of you do not necessarily have the money to give. So the best and the free way is to like and subscribe to our channel, and please share our content to help us fight the suppression, and make sure you leave a comment. So what do you think about this? I don't want to call it debate, but this whole idea of a new national order, trying to move away from the West, even though a lot of these countries are still embedded in the West and are still utilizing a lot of those same Western practices to capitalize and imperialize other nations, and more especially the working class in those nations in particular. Help us get to free K. Actually, we're close to 2,500 subs, so we're about 100 shy from getting there. So 2,500, not free K. But help us out anyway so that we're able to continue growing, and we do appreciate you guys for helping us grow consistently. And thanks for watching.
Yay, we did it.
You're learning so many important things, and I'm so proud of you.
Yeah. Mr. Rogers, the best. Alright. So, 2 chats. I know there's some people hanging out over on the Rumble. Go start. This is insane. They're rating college kids over protests. That is correct. We've talked about that a few times. They're going to continue doing that. Spirit of the Age, go start hanging out on the Rumbles. What do you got over on the YouTubes?
So Bad Wolf on YouTube said the old work is dying. I think the old world is dying, and the new world struggles to be born. Now it's the time of monsters.
Yep.
Yeah. Who
saying
said that?
Gramsci, the guy Sachs.
Yeah.
Like World War I philosopher.
Okay.
That was being quoted.
Angel, fellow colleague in INN, also said, what I'm concerned about is if the U.S. is willing to go to war, if the world order that the U.S. imposed after World War II is threatened.
Yeah, which they've already been doing.
Right.
So,
Desert Mantis in chat, China is a speaking giant. Let her lie and sleep, for when she awakens, she will astonish the world. Napoleon Bonaparte. Let's see, anyone else? Sean in the chat, thank you for your donation earlier. Said, imagine if the West lost World War II, how different would all of this be? I'm sure it'll be another power that would be kind of like the main power now. I don't know, like, you maybe somewhere in like China already, possibly, maybe, but I can imagine that like that hole would be filled by another country in some way, shape, or form. I would imagine. So let's see.
Well, there's a whole argument whether China's capitalist or not, how that figures into everything. But, I mean, you've also seen us try to meddle in their affairs as well, just in case,
Mm-hmm.
So...
Chris H. in chat, India is the I in BRICS. They help create BRICS. You have to meet some prerequisites to join BRICS, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
I think that's GDP related.
Yeah. Money. So,
I mean, keep in mind,
again,
BRICS is just an alternative to the World Bank. That's what they've, like they've given more power to the individual users than the World Bank has, for sure, seeing as how U.S. has, like, the power in that situation. So, I mean, it's a slightly more democratic in its makeup, but...
Sure.
So I'll give it that.
It doesn't matter when they utilize the same practices as the West, so... Whatever. I think that's it.
Yeah.
On YouTube.
Cool. Well, let's get to our next one then. We've talked about the persecution of people supporting Palestine in multiple places, in multiple situations, especially with the protests happening here and Trump deporting people and things like that. So I figured we should...
But this story is more in Europe.
Yes.
Like what's happening in Europe regarding...
Yep.
Any protests in Palestine.
I have this from the Electronic Intifada, David Cronin. Cops in Brussels seize Palestinian activists on the city streets. So, not doing well there. He writes, the arrest of the Palestinian activist Mohammed Khatib in Brussels fills me with fear. It fills me with fear not only because I know and like Mohammed Khatib for some time, I've been worried about the threats right-wing Belgian politicians have been making against him. It fills me with fear because this could be the start of something bigger and far more abhorrent. Khatib was seized by police after he had left a demonstration against Israel's genocidal attacks on Gaza. Think for a moment about what signal that sends out. Cosmopolitan liberal Brussels is a city where the cops can grab people with dissenting views as they walk along the streets. Although Khatib was released early the following morning, we can be sure that the story does not end here. The newly formed Belgian government has made it clear that it wants to ban Saimadoun, the group which Khatib represents. Saimadoun has long been in the crosshairs of the pro-Israel lobby, which falsely depicts the group as threatening the Jews based on their ethnicity or religion. I mean, they literally try to have it deemed a terrorist organization, which is just incredibly ironic. The only evidence adduced by the lobby is declarations of support that Saimadoun has made for Palestinian armed resistance. I do believe specifically the PLF, right? The UN General Assembly has recognized repeatedly that people living under an apartheid system and military occupation have a right to resistance, including armed struggle. We've talked about that before. Upholding that right shouldn't be a controversial matter in Brussels, a city which was placed under military occupation by Germany 85 years ago. In many parts of the city, it is impossible to go for a short stroll without encountering plaques honoring the Nazis' victims. The arrest of Mahmoud Khatib illustrates that these plaques and the messages they convey are being ignored. The Belgian authorities are not siding with Palestinians going through a 21st century Holocaust in Gaza and their supporters around the world. They are siding with Israel, the state carrying out that Holocaust, and its network of lobbies. So, who's next? If the Belgian authorities enjoy any success in muzzling Mahmoud Khatib and Saimadoun, then we have to ask, who is next? All Palestine solidarity campaigners are at risk, and Palestine isn't some kind of hermetically sealed issue. The struggle for justice and equality between the River Jordan and the sea cannot be separated from other struggles against oppression, impoverishment, and environmental degradation. In Brussels, protests in support of Palestinian rights have been diverse. Like in many other cities, they have brought together Muslims, Jews, Christians, non-believers, trade unionists, feminists, and LGBTQ activists. If the authorities ramp up the repression of activists for Palestinian rights, then the question must be asked, who's next? Belgium's latest government is nicknamed Arizona, as the colors of the parties in the ruling coalition resemble that state's flag. The connections are emblematic in another way. Arizona is now synonymous with border militarization. Brussels hosts institutions which have made the militarization of the EU's borders a priority to which the political mainstream is now fully committed. Israeli weapons and surveillance technology tested on Palestinians is being used in militarization processes both in Europe and along the U.S.-Mexico border. While Frontex, the EU's border guard agency, is based in Warsaw, the policies it implements are made in Brussels. The agency's real value will be underscored next week, when it will be the most visible EU body at a weapons industry conference in Copenhagen. One of the weapons Frontex uses to track refugees is an Israeli drone. This is an example of Israeli versatility. Tools of occupation and even genocide can be adapted for various purposes. Mahmoud Khadib has every right to live and be politically active in Belgium. The way he has been arrested this week shows how little basic rights are being discarded. It would be nice if Europeans could simply go for a beer or an ice cream and celebrate that we are better than America. The truth is that any such complacency would be foolish. The detention of Mahmoud Khalil, a U.S. green card holder, over his role in New York protests is frightening. Nothing quite as extreme has happened in Europe so far this year. Repression is nonetheless rife. In Germany, citizens of other European countries now face deportation for defending Palestinian rights. Germany regards standing by Israel at all times as a Strafraison, a reason of state. And God help anyone who thinks otherwise. Germany's Ursula von der Leyen is the EU's most powerful politician, vow genocide, as Claire Daly would call her, or at least is behaving as such. Despite her dispute with Trump over tariffs, which is bullshit, her agenda bears strong similarities to that of the U.S. president. Trump and his team are gleefully kicking people out of the U.S., sending them to concentration camps in El Salvador. Von der Leyen and her team are determined to kick as many people out of the EU as they can get away with. The list of countries they have deemed as safe for expulsions include Egypt, Morocco, India, and Tunisia. So, in case you needed to write those down. None of these countries can seriously be considered safe for people who challenge their governments. Few places are safe now, and when cops feel they can simply grab people on the streets of Brussels, Europe is anything but safe. Thoughts so far before we head to our next one?
I mean, just the same shit that's happening over here, really. So, I mean, I think it just kind of shows the hold the Israeli lobby have on our politicians everywhere. It's not just exclusive to the U.S. Like, and even this is happening in Belgium, which you would think is, I wouldn't say liberal, but I think generally a lot of people think that Europe is slightly more liberal, depending on the country, than
which it
the
can
U.S.
be.
is. Which
Just
it can be
depends on the
depending on
issue.
Well, in this issue, you know, we can tell it's definitely like the farthest of, not the farthest of the right wing, but definitely more right in terms of dealing with any dissent. For you know, for Palestine, which I think is kind of interesting. It just seems to me like the more that people, well, the world order is trying to crack down on people to maintain, you know, the status with Israel, the more people I think are just over it and over just really more willing to dissent. So I think if anything is having more of an opposite effect, instead of trying to have people win to their side in terms of being more pro-Israel, I think is making the case for people to actually kind of look into Israel a lot more and kind of seeing a lot of their colonialist and imperialist practices that they've been implementing since really the turn of the century. So, but yeah, I think it just proves that no one is safe, especially when it comes to the Israeli lobby, and any dissent in terms of you showing any support for Palestine can get you arrested.
Yep. Which is just nuts to me. I mean, they're doing that weird shit across the board. So, but that article mentioned Germany, right? So we'll head over there. No, but specifically, he also at the end mentioned Germany. So we have Alan McLeod writing in Mint Press about Germany specifically, and the case of Hussein Dagru, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who's facing prison time in Germany for criticizing Israeli journalists, which, is there such a thing, or are they just propagandists? Find out at 11. So, amid a crackdown on pro-Palestinian voices in Germany, a journalist regularly attacked as a Russian operative is facing up to 3 years in prison for defamation of Israeli-backed journalists. Hossein Dogru, founder of Red Media, has been charged with defamation for actions relating to a spat with Nicholas Potter, a German state-funded reporter working for the Israeli outlet, the Jerusalem Post. In December, Potter, self-styled counter-extremist expert, published a lengthy expose in the Jerusalem Post claiming that Red Media, Mint Press News, and the Gray Zone were part of a network of far-left outlets promoting extremism and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Worse still, he strongly insinuated that all three were promoted and funded by the governments of Russia, Syria, and Iran. These charges are false, see Mint Press's rebuttal, and are particularly ironic, coming as they do from a journalist who is funded by the German Foreign Office, one who, amid a genocide, moved to Israel to work for an outlet headed by a former IDF spokesperson. Moreover, Potter himself arguably holds extreme views on the subject. Just weeks after attacking us for our journalism, he penned an article titled, "Can Journalists Be Terrorists?", which attempted to justify many of Israel's killing of Palestinian media workers. Both Red and Mint Press immediately highlighted much of this important context, and our content went viral. A sticker about Potter based on Red Media graphic was spotted in Berlin. The sticker took the outlet's criticism of him and plastered the phrase, the German Hurensohn, the German son of a bitch. Over the top, that sticker is a centerpiece of the prosecution's allegation of a coordinated hate campaign against Potter, led by Red Media. Potter claims that he has suffered harassment and threats to his life, and some have tried to link this back to Red Media's graphic. So, there's that graphic, right? German journalist as good as genocide propaganda, so good at genocide propaganda, hired in Israel. That's the sticker, right? So, well, that's the graphic. They then made it a sticker and put it up places. So, I think that might not be a good idea to do that if we're worried about, you shouldn't put stickers up like that if that's the issue. But the accusations provoked a storm of articles in German media, all supportive of Potter. Many echoed U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken's claims that Red Media is a Russian government-controlled influence operation. Doper denies these allegations, although he was previously a key part of Redfish, a platform financed by Reply, a German-based outlet partially funded by the Russian state-controlled network RT. After the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Dogru closed Redfish and started his own independent outlet. He insists it has no connection to Russia and is dedicated to making revolutionary and educational content. He also denies having any information or involvement in producing anti-Potter stickers. Potter's support for Israeli policies has certainly drawn the ire of many in the pro-Palestine movement in Germany, yet he is far from alone. The German government has offered its full support to Israel, gone so far as to ban pro-Palestine demonstrations and lock up countless activists, including Jewish people. The phrase "from the river to the sea" has effectively been criminalized, with Berlin announcing that it would deny citizenship to anyone using it. New German citizenship laws require all applicants to sign what is, in effect, a loyalty oath to the State of Israel, declaring that it has a right to exist. Berlin is currently deporting foreign residents for their participation in lawful protests supporting Palestinian rights. Dogru's legal team had advised him that his wife and son could be deported as well. Sound familiar? Commentators have warned that with these actions, Germany is lurching towards the authoritarian right, with the far-right AfD party surging in the polls. A recent survey found they are now the most popular party in Germany. Many inside the country are ringing the alarm bells. For decades, Germany has stuck with Israel and its narratives in the Middle East. Dogru told Mint Press, adding, since October 7th, we see that the German government is violently repressing activists to make sure there are no voices in Germany critical of Israel. Activists have paid a high price to make sure they can protest. According to Dogru, this is a test case. Ultimately, the suppression of speech is not about Israel, but an attack on its own society. Germany, in preparing to assert itself as a leading military and political force in NATO and the EU, to do that, it must eliminate resistance, not just abroad, but at home. This isn't driven by historical guilt or solidarity, it's about silencing dissent and disciplining society. By targeting the most marginalized, the German state is disciplining its population, silencing oppression before it grows. The message from the German government is clear, Dogru claims: fall in line or be crushed. Thoughts, Care Bear?
Well, as I said, I think it's having the opposite effect of what they want. Like it's forcing people to kind of realize the stronghold that Israel has on the West, and I think and it always it's affecting the idea of Jewish people not being safe. In this case, yes, I agree, because and I don't want to sound, and it's not fair in this regard, but yeah, people are going to associate what Israel is doing to what Jewish people are doing, which the two, you can't mesh the two, but at the same time, other than like, obviously, if you're anti-Zionist, and that's really more the issue that I think we're not discussing too much, is the idea, it's not so much the faith in of itself, is Zionism, which is not a faith. Let's make that clear. Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism. You can be Jew and not, and Indy, who we love dearly, is one. That's clearly separate from the religion of it in of itself. Like, and I think we have to be careful in making that distinction, because I think people are kind of summing up, which I think in a lot of ways is adding to more the victimization of Jewish people might feel, and being like, oh, like these people don't like me because I'm Jewish. No, it's the idea of what you seemingly represent in terms of Zionism. That's what people don't like about you, or the idea of you thinking like, out of your suffering, that it's okay for you to colonize and terrorize another people group for the sake of land for you, in the matter of you feeling safe. Whereas in the West, I feel like you're Jewish, no offense to anyone, but you're probably among the safest people in the world at this point, for sure. Because, our politicians are bending over backwards to fulfill the need of Jewish people here, whereas Black people have been kind of going at this for centuries, and we do not get the same protection or safety, which honestly kind of pisses me off, but speaking for me as a Black man, it should be offered that same care and concern for everybody, regardless of who you are, and not just exclusively because you happen to be Jewish/Zionist.
How about that? It would help if I wasn't muted, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I thought
I'm just tripping. I was just saying it sucks, but like, we're gonna see more of this, especially with, what are they making now? Autism registries, and you're not allowed to. what's the new thing? You're not allowed to be part of the NHS unless you right to exist stuff, right? Wasn't that a racist thing? Someone in chat will let me know. Old Bobby Kennedy fucking it up for everybody. Fucking dumb bullshit. Anyway, told you so, motherfuckers. By the way, told you so. Just saying. Fuck. But yeah. Ugh. Well, talking about this stuff is most likely why YouTube has demonetized us. So, if you would like to support us anyway, you can go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork or scan that QR code on your screen. As always, links to donate are in the description below. You can't give monetarily. We get it. It's tough out there. Eggs are expensive. Hit the like and subscribe button. Share the stream. You know, leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Are they coming for us next? Most likely, but, you know.
Yeah.
Share with us your thoughts. And otherwise, thanks for watching. So, to the chats. I saw some stuff over on the Rumbles. Ghost Start. ICE arrests Virginia man in courthouse raid. Right after judge dismissed case against him, agents had no badges, refused to show warrant, then put him in an unmarked van. That wouldn't go well around here, around these parts, I'm just saying. You know? We're a little further south than Virginia. People got trigger fingers they'll use, so, you know, sucks. But that's going to cause some problems with people. So we had Stephanie. They have healthcare and better regulations on food, but don't have First Amendment rights. Yeah, the free speech rights in Europe are, I need to look more into, for sure. But anyway, because they have to have some stuff, or, you know, like, somewhere in that Magna Carta's got to say some shit about saying some shit. But what do I know? Bad cookies, I was never an RFK backer, so I don't feel bad about it. Well, good for you. You listened. They also tackled an old person when they chased him down, said Indy. Yep. So, I mean, you could just wait for him to run out of steam and go grab the old guy, I guess. But no, tackling him, that's what we need. So, you know, our tax dollars probably won't pay for the new hip he'll need either. But Dr. Nick says, yes, they're coming for us next. X-Men isn't just a comic. Yep. I feel you, dog. Colin's been talking about that shit for a minute. That shit's some predictive programming, ain't it?
Yeah.
So...
By the way, you need to put that terrorist quote in the...
Yeah.
In the
thing. Yep, yeah. I'll have to do. But... Anyway,
that was such a good line.
Was it? I haven't watched it, so I've not watched the new ones.
I think we said we were going to do a discussion on that or something.
Sure.
Maybe last summer when I was off, but we never did.
Yeah. All right, you ready for our next one?
Yeah, but you know, the quote is, most other nations don't allow terrorists to be their leader, and then Magneto replies, and yet so many allow their leaders to become terrorists.
Yep. So, he ain't wrong.
No.
So, I mean, that's when you feel that Magneto really isn't the bad guy, you know?
Right.
Like, that's...
Which is so weird. Well, I think obviously growing up and living life, you get to see things. But yeah, definitely when I watched, you know, the 90s X-Men, you know, it was the idea of like Magneto was, you know, the bad guy. But now watching it now, but then like with X-Men 97 that came out last year,
yeah,
you definitely have a different perspective being like, oh shit, like
Books are even better.
If anything, Xavier was the bitch in many ways. Like,
Kind of, sort of.
like, you know, not to say he was completely, but you know, he was definitely more passive in his approach, which I think has its place, but
yeah,
you know, but you can only be so kind and so peaceful for so long before you have to take action.
What's the episode? I don't. It's in the books too about they get like they put out advertisements for X-Men to like mutants to go to a certain island that they'd be accepted at that island.
Genosha,
and then they like fuck them all up, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of which, sounds very very familiar, you know.
Right. So to be very transparent, I don't know a lot about this story, but I pulled it because it was very interesting. But mostly because we've known of the idea of, you know, Israel wants to give Gazians the boot, and you know, just thinking about where they're going to go and all that.
Egypt,
India, like, yeah. So we've talked about the idea of, you know, Gaza being in Africa before, but this again kind of went under the radar. But you know, there's been talks of Palestinians being sent to Somaliland. Now, a lot of you are like, wow, is Somaliland? You might have heard of Somalia. Sure, I'm sure a lot of you would have, but you may never heard of Somaliland.
Okay.
So I think before I go into the article that was written by Kit Clarenberg, wanted to give a little bit of context about Somaliland and its significance. And just looking at it on the map right there, you can probably already tell. But so let's learn a little bit about the geopolitics of Somaliland, and then we'll dive into this a little bit more.
Situated in the northeastern portion of the Horn of Africa is the breakaway territory of Somaliland. Somaliland broke away from Somalia in 1991 after a decade-long war of independence, which was considered to be a main theatre of the largest Somali rebellion against the government of then-President Siad Barre, which began in 1978. The de facto state, unrecognised by any other country in the world, controls an area largely similar to that of its British colonial predecessor, British Somaliland, barring two areas to its south and east, which are under the control of the officially recognised Somali government, but also claimed by Somaliland as part of its territory. Somaliland is considered stable by local standards, having its own constitution, currency, elections, military and police. Were Somaliland recognised as a state, it is estimated it would be the fourth poorest country in the world as of 2012. Given its position overlooking the Gulf of Aden and the nearby Bab el-Mandeb Strait, through which roughly 10% of the world's seaborne oil flows each year, Somaliland's geostrategic position is important, and this has drawn the interest of many states.
Yeah.
Though Somaliland is not recognised by any other country, it does have relations with many states, such as Kenya, Pakistan, Turkey, the US, UK, and Germany. Somaliland also has strong ties with neighbouring Ethiopia, which date back to the beginning of the battle for its independence. Given its reliance on the port of Djibouti in neighbouring Djibouti for its trade, Ethiopia, in partnership with the UAE's DP World and Somaliland, are developing the Berbera Corridor, a trade and logistics corridor that runs from Ethiopia to the port of Berbera in Somaliland. Another interesting recent addition to Somaliland's foreign relations has been the United Arab Emirates, whose DP World Port Company is involved in the aforementioned Berbera Corridor project, and the development of the new Berbera port, which it aims to turn into a new regional logistics hub. Of even more interest was the UAE's 2017 deal with the Somaliland government to establish a military base near Berbera, but this deal was later cancelled. Moving forward into the 21st century, Somaliland's status as a relatively stable yet unrecognised de facto state looks set to continue, though with increasing foreign investment its economic situation will most likely improve. That said, due to its geostrategic position and the shifting geopolitical dynamic in the Horn and wider region, outside interest in Somaliland will likely grow too.
Right, so you can probably guess, they told you, but one, there's oil. Two, that strait there is, you know, extremely important, because heading up that, eventually you head up it's kind of parallel to the Nile. So obviously, given the resources in the area, especially with Egypt being further north, that
not that
constitutes a lot of trade.
Israel's been able to push goods down it, because I think the Houthis have been keeping control of that.
But it's a strategic position in regards to Yemen and mostly Iran. So that's why the West is looking at Somaliland with, insert that meme with that guy behind the tree just licking his lips and rubbing his hands. So just to kind of give you guys a little bit of the geopolitical significance of Somaliland. Now, before we get into the article, let's go into the current issue as far as essentially disposing Palestinians to Somaliland. So we're going to go to TRT World for that report.
Okay.
So Reef, if you
working on it,
if you would be so kind.
Yes, sir. Let's go here.
For almost 18 months after October 7th, 2023, life for Palestinians living in Gaza had been a nightmare. The Hamas attack triggered a devastating retaliation from Israel, ultimately leading to deaths of tens of thousands of people and a massive displacement and humanitarian crisis. Much of the Strip was left destroyed. The fighting finally ended January. The sides agreed to a
News Network.
Since then,
no, actually, I said TRT. It's not TRT. It's
Africa Live. The current needs of Gaza's
it's
residents.
African Live.
Should they remain in the enclave during reconstruction or be settled somewhere else temporarily or permanently? U.S. President Donald Trump wants to see the U.S. take over Gaza entirely and for its residents to be settled elsewhere. Along with Israel, they approached 3 African governments, Sudan and Somalia, as well as a breakaway region of Somalia known as Somaliland. It's a proposal which hasn't gone down well in Mogadishu.
Okay, in my opinion, as an independent politician, Somali politician, I don't think that will get the unanimous support of the Somali people, be it people, the population, or the government.
The US and Israel are very wrong in their decision. The same people that they killed and displaced, they now want to force them to move to another country and bring them here to Somalia. That is unacceptable because we are already suffering from civil conflict and unrest.
Under Trump's plan, Gaza's more than 2 million people will be permanently sent elsewhere. Palestinians in Gaza have rejected the proposal and dismissed Israeli claims that the departures will be voluntary. They believe it's a strategy to cleanse the area of Palestinians.
Yes. I find Trump's proposal to resettle the people of Gaza unfeasible. Even children should not entertain such a plan. This reflects Trump's simplistic thinking, and I doubt the Palestinians will accept it, as Palestine is their homeland. There is no place better than your own country.
The idea of a mass transfer of Palestinians was once considered a fantasy of Israel's ultra-nationalist fringe. Arab nations have opposed the proposal and offered an alternative reconstruction plan that would leave the Palestinians in place. Rights groups have said forcing or pressuring the Palestinians to leave could be a potential war crime. Sharon Baranga, CGTN.
Potential war crime to displace thousands against their will. No, I think that's on the list. I'm pretty sure that's right up there. That's like Geneva Code Section 2, Article 4. That's like the first ones, bro. Anyway,
so now you got a little bit of the geopolitics, and now you or the history, and now you got a little more of the current politics regarding displacing Palestinians there. Now we're going to get into the art. So shout out to Kip Thunberg, who wrote this on his Substack / and ScheerPost picked it up.
Yep.
Where he writes, Somaliland, British colony, Palestinian concentration camp. Where he writes, in recent months, Somaliland has become a subject of intense, unprecedented interest for the Western media. Funny, I haven't heard any of this at all, but we'll continue. As Israeli and U.S. officials scramble to find a destination to forcibly relocate Gaza's population from their shattered homeland, the little-acknowledged, unrecognizable breakaway statelet is increasingly viewed as an attractive option. Multiple mainstream media reports indicates officials in Tel Aviv and Washington are making discreet overtures to Harissa on the topic. On March 14th, Financial Times revealed a U.S. official briefed on Washington's initial contacts with Somaliland's presidency said discussions had begun about a possible deal to recognize the de facto state in return for the establishment of a military base near the port of Berea on the Red Sea coast. I guess.
I would imagine.
Somaliland's President Abdulrahman
So
Mohammed.
wait, hold on. U.S. official briefed on Washington's Somalian presidency said this could be a possible deal to recognize for the. Oh, they want a military base there. Of course they fucking do.
Yes.
You fucking bastards.
Yes.
Like, yeah, we need something so that we can get our ships to Navy. We need a naval port and a military base right there at this really crucial port. Okay.
Yes.
You fucking dickheads. All right. Cool. Good to know.
Somaliland's President Abdirahman Mohammed Abdullahi has made international recognition a major priority, and the prospect of a permanent U.S. military presence insulating the breakaway territory from violent instability that regularly engulfs Somalia is also no doubt enormously attractive. From Washington's perspective, too, such an arrangement offers profuse geopolitical gains well beyond the involuntary relocation of millions of Palestinians to make way for Trump's fantasized Gaza Lago. For one, Somaliland's proximity to the Arabian Peninsula makes the territory an ideal staging ground for strikes on Yemen.
Thank you.
Which is exactly like you said. This would represent a vital new strategic foothold for the empire in Africa at a time French and U.S. occupation forces are being evicted from countries across the continent with ever-increasing rapidity. Moreover, it could serve as a counterweight to consistently growing Chinese and Russian influence locally. In 2017, Beijing established its first overseas military base in Somaliland's neighboring Djibouti. Ever since, the country has been a pugnacious critic of Western policy in the region and allowed Iranian ships to dock at its ports. The geopolitical and military utility of Somaliland's recognition as a state has long been understood in Washington. Project 2025, a lengthy mandate for leadership drawn up by the right-wing Heritage Foundation think tank, widely perceived as a blueprint for Donald Trump's second term in office, contained a dedicated section of countering malign Chinese activity in Africa. It specifically recommended the recognition of Somaliland's statehood as a hedge against the U.S. deteriorating position in Djibouti. Trump's readiness to recognize Somaliland was furthermore advertised in November 2024, long before the would-be country became a political candidate for the resettlement of Palestinians. Former British Defense Secretary Gavin Williamson revealed he had been engaged in really good meetings with the president's policy leads on the issue and expressed confidence the White House would act accordingly. Williamson has long been an ardent advocate of Somaliland's independence, regularly undertaking all expense-paid trips to the breakaway territory and receiving honorary citizenship for his lobbying efforts. Jesus Christ.
A little pay to play. Never hurts anybody. You know?
Williamson's pronounced interest in Somaliland is a uniquely rare public manifestation of a little-known truth. While formally granted independence by London in 1960, and having claimed to be a sovereign autonomous region of Somalia since 1991, Somaliland is a modern-day British colony. Were Palestinians uprooted there against their will, they would be entombed in yet another open-air concentration camp under the watchful eye of British-trained local security forces with a propensity of extreme violence.
Which we covered.
Right. In April 2019, prolific British government contractor Axis Strategy declared bankruptcy, leaving scores of staff unpaid and overseas suppliers owed vast sums. The company's abrupt disintegration came despite reaping tens of millions of pounds from the Foreign Office of Development projects throughout Africa and West Asia. While largely ignored by the Western media, the Somaliland Chronicle published a detailed investigation into the scandal, but Axis was at the time of its collapse engaged in a justice and security sector reform project in the statelet. Local official records indicate London earmarked over £18 million for this effort alone in Somaliland, 2017 through 2022. It is just one of many British bankrolled projects in the breakaway territory, which results in Somaliland's entire state structure, including its government, military, judiciary, prisons, police, security, and intelligence apparatus, being managed, trained, and directed by London. Such pervasive hidden influence in these sensitive areas is amply exposed by the contents of numerous leaked British intelligence files. For example, one document discusses how notorious British intelligence cutout Adam Smith International provides ongoing training and mentoring to build the capacity of Somaliland's National Intelligence Agency and Rapid Response Unit while overseeing the territory's forensic service, a personal identification and recording system that captures data at border posts, and prosecution procedures managed by the Attorney General's office. Somaliland's dedicated counterterrorism unit was moreover created in 2012 with Foreign Office funding under ASI management. Elsewhere, ASI boasts of its proven history of establishing close professional relationships with senior government, armed forces, police, security sector, and Ministry of Defense officials in Somaliland. One file notes the contractor deployed specialist ex-UK military advisors to run a program to improve the capacity of military intelligence units in the Army and Coast Guard. ASI also assisted with the development of Somaliland's Officer Cadet course, mentoring senior officers in leadership, management, and military doctrine. The contractor has even drafted laws subsequently adopted by the government. Meanwhile, Albany, another British contractor, was charged with tutoring Somaliland's authorities in the art of propaganda and information warfare.
Nice.
This entailed structured training and mentoring of key government ministers and other senior figures in working with the media, helping them produce a steady flow of information detailing the government's work and engage proactively with journalists. It was noted unsatisfied public demand for information from the government on nationally significant events gave independent information sources significant influence locally, which was to be countered by all costs.
Okay.
Public distrust of the government was moreover exacerbated by the regular arrests of journalists and the closure of independent media outlets in Somaliland. By providing extensive media training to key government ministries and state organs and appointed spokesmen and media officers, Albany would help authorities to use the media to better communicate their reform agenda with one voice, thus dominating the breakaway territory's information space and silencing dissenting local elements. What does this sound like to you, Reef?
America? Just about?
Yeah.
But also, I mean, this is just narrative control and, getting rid of independent journalism because quote, what was it? Must be countered at all costs. Unsatisfied public demand for information from the government or nationally significant events, so people know that their fucking media is lying to them and they're like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Bad, bad idea. Ugh. Okay.
But anyway, for all ASI's boasts of professionalizing and reforming Somaliland's armed forces and police, other leaked files related to the activities on contractor Kofi paint a very different picture. For instance, one document notes the stateless military. It's the largest and most costly institution of state, but its chiefs resist oversight by the Ministry of Defense, and it is likely army funds are being used for purposes other than national defense and security. Moreover, capacity for holding the military accountable for abuses is, quote-unquote, limited. Elsewhere, Kofi noted that Somaliland police have a history of applying disproportionate force to contain disorder. Again, sounds familiar. And the territory lacks a dedicated public order unit. The contractor suggested creating such an entity in the ranks of the Special Protection Unit, a paramilitary force created to protect foreign organizations operating in the aspiring country and individuals they employ. At the time of writing, it had no remit to professionally or proportionately respond to planned and spontaneous events, peaceful protests, and outbreaks of serious public disorder. The document was offered in July 2015. It called for Somaliland law enforcement to be trained and assessed by UK National Police in Britain. There, they would learn first aid, how to engage effectively with crowds of protesters, and gain understanding of human rights according to international law.
Which is bullshit.
Tutoring officers in constructive, peaceful methods of dealing with public disturbances would, Kofi pledged, ensure proportionality, lawfulness, and accountability throughout Somaliland's police forces. If such training was conducted, it evidently had no tangible impact whatsoever. In late 2022, mass protests broke out in the contested Somalian city of Las Anad. Somaliland security forces crushed the upheaval using lethal force, leaving dozens dead. Unrest only intensified thereafter, leading to Somaliland's military savagely shelling the city the next year. In April 2023, Amnesty International report branded the assault indiscriminate in the extreme, with civilian infrastructure, including hospitals, schools, and mosques struck, hundreds killed and injured, and hundreds of thousands displaced.
And where have we seen
Given
that
its
before?
context, right. And this is where the West wants to send Palestinians.
Send them from one pot into the fire, essentially.
Right.
Okay. Great.
Given this context, Somaliland's appeal to Israel and its Western puppet masters as a dumping ground for Gazians is obvious. A well-armed, repressive domestic security apparatus stands ever ready to brutally quell any and all local resistance. Meanwhile, if the U.S. used the territory to strike Yemen, displaced Palestinians could be exploited as hostages and human shields to deter Ansar Allah counterattacks. We can only hope this disposable scheme crumbles as quickly as prior plans to shunt Gazians into Egypt and Jordan. So, great job, Kit. But yeah, I mean, it's, as you said, from going from one pot to another pot, and it just sounds like to me, it's more or less double trouble in terms of what Somalians in Somaliland are going through already, coupled with the idea of Palestinians being entered there. So it's just a mess, potentially all around. So, but yeah, that's why I wanted to play the news clip prior to that, just to kind of show that Somalians there are not having it.
Nope. We know what's up.
Right. So, so obviously this is meant to kind of build dissent, to cause more unrest within the the statelet. I guess you could say it is. But yeah, just the idea of we'll recognize you as a state if you take Palestinians, and we can build a military there to. And again, I would argue they talk about Yemen, but Iran as well, that they can kind of watch over, but then kind of overtake the resources that are in the area there as well as a little gift for themselves too. Again, they mentioned there's oil in that region too. Yep. So obviously where there's oil, there's going to be interest to both the US and Israel. So
and that and just the geographic location,
right.
Being able to be a strategic encampment. So funny to bring up the human shields thing too. That's par for the course for Western powers, and then they'll blame, their enemies for doing the same when they don't do that. So, but, but good looking out though, for sure. We'll keep an eye on that region.
Well, I mean, Africa in general, but it's just adding more.
Yeah.
Just Israel has their hand.
Forced migration,
Right. But Israel has their hand everywhere. We've already talked about how Israel basically kind of exploits Africa, not exploit, but like they give them things, like as far as infrastructure in terms of things that they need to buy favor with these countries so that,
Yeah.
Politicians and leaders there would be more sympathetic to them. And we've seen that and we've talked about that. But just the whole Greater Israel Project. I would also argue, because we talk about the Great Israel Project in terms of, like the Middle East and East in the Arabian Peninsula. I would also argue that a lot of that would kind of affect Africa as well, particularly south and southwest of Egypt, especially along like the Nile region there. So, given what we talked about as far as the Ben Gurion project, like, given that, especially within that strait next to Somaliland, again, that's parallel to Nile. It's also traditionally, perfect for the Arabian Peninsula. But then, obviously, as we said before, like Israel basically will have control, or the idea that they have full control and full resources over that entire region. And the West basically benefits from that, as given that Israel is their proxy. So, yeah, but it's just the idea of sending Palestinians there to a region of Africa that is under civil unrest already, thanks UK, and then bringing another people group in to add to more of that confusion. I think it's essentially, I feel like it's a British way or like the West way of saying, okay, since we can't kill you in Gaza, we're going to send you over to Somaliland where we can kill you, thanks to the British.
Yeah.
And you can go to war with the Somalians there.
Literally move the goalposts. Literally.
Right.
Move them to a different continent. And, if it's in Africa, people just stop paying attention. So, that's how it
the
works.
idea that the thing is that Kit, now granted, Kit is based in the UK, so there might have been coverage over there.
Yeah.
Definitely did not hear any coverage about that over here.
No.
So I do want to give Kit, the benefit of the doubt. Maybe, in UK media, that's slightly better. That they might, but but definitely not here in the States. So but like I said, I thought it was very interesting, given that just Africa again essentially being the dumping ground, for the rest. But people shit on Africa, but yet they want to do everything within Africa in order to exploit them for their own benefit. Just another story that kind of speaks into that imperialism and exploitation of Africa. So there you go.
A lot of stuff happens that the news won't tell you.
Yeah. What? Huh? What? News not telling you things? Who would have thunk? Anything else?
No, that's all I got.
Okay. Well,
that's why we're demonetized, because we talk about stuff like this that no one else does. So if you want to continue hearing more stories about this, you should scan that QR code that you see on your screen if you have a smartphone and watching on your computer. Or you can go to the Ko-fi link that you see at the bottom of your screen there. Or if you're in YouTube, you can type in !donate and the Ko-fi link will come up. And if you give there, you'll see your donation and your message on screen. So that would be our small benefit of what we're able to do for you if you do that. You can also give to our CashApp, PayPal, and Substack accounts. Those links are in the description if you want to give to us there. But as we keep saying, we understand how, and we do appreciate your generous donations to help us support the channel. But obviously, we know that people are not doing so hot financially, and we want, as we keep saying, we want you guys to take care of yourselves first. So that being said, if you want to support us the free way, don't forget to like and subscribe, and please share to fight suppression, because we experience that a lot, and we're shadow banned on YouTube. And make sure you leave a comment. So, first of all, have you ever heard of Somaliland before? Let's start there. But then, what do you think about the potential of Gazians being displaced to Somaliland, and especially given its geopolitical significance? What do you think about this whole thing? Essentially, how the British are basically using it as, their military stomping ground, and the idea of having Somalians there with Palestinians to kind of add more chaos. So let us know in the comments, or if you're watching the segment, of what you think. And help us get to 3K. We're actually very close to 2,500. We're about we're about 99 people away from 2,500. So please hit both benchmarks so that so more people can see our content. And thanks for watching.
Yay. We did it. Two chats. So over on the Rumble, we did Magneto call his group the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. I mean, who says that's what he said? Maybe he's just super sarcastic, bro. I don't know. What do you want from me? But anyway, so go start. I'm a stick it to China with Somaliland. So yay. Nothing like exploiting Africa for our own purposes.
Yeah.
It's a pastime of ours. People were talking about Johnny Somalia and not Johnny Tsunami, not to be confused with that. Did people even know what that is? People know about Johnny Tsunami? No? Nobody watched the Disney Channel in the 90s? Just me? Apparently just me. Apparently I was the only one.
I didn't have cable for most of the 90s, so...
Dude, it was super radical tubular times, bro. It was great. Go check out Johnny Tsunami. But people also talking about tamales. Somehow they got on that discussion. Tamales and tahine. You know about tahine? I've told you about tahine before, right? Very tasty stuff. Put it on your fruits. Yummers. Put it around your mixed drinks with Mexican beers. Delicious. Terrible stuff. Get it on your mango. It's nice.
Kill your egregores, said move Israel there.
Yep.
Meaning Somaliland. Well, the gag was initially the idea that Israel would have been in East Africa. That's the gag of it. So they were like, no, we're
slightly different people.
Right. So we're like, no, we want to be in British Palestine at the time. So
were people talking about
there's that.
Houthis and the Blowfish? New band name?
TL Orca said, geez, another colony. Western values. I know, right? I think there was a couple more. So Steve Gill said human trafficking.
Yeah.
Yep. That cookie said click Camberg, right? Yes, click Camberg. Definitely follow him.
And he said he was in Eastern Europe with Rubenstein. He does believe, so not necessarily in the UK at the minute. Tahini is good AF. Put it on Kelly Rowland. Yum. I mean, I feel like you might have to ask for consent. Just saying. Reef pronounced it correctly, says Kill Your Egregores. Hey man, what do you want from me? Just because I know weird nerd shit doesn't mean anything, alright? It means nothing. You know, just roll for perception and it's going to be all right. It's going to be fine. So anyway, let's get to our next one. So cool. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, right? About the Palestinian Red Crescent. At least me and Indy did. About them in uniforms and ambulances being attacked by Israel and people were murdered. So we also talked about those kill zone procedures a couple of weeks ago, right? And Eva Kareen Bartlett reminding people that those kill zones are not new, that that's policy that's been around. But I figured we'd do another round of Eva said it's not new. So this is from Eva in Gaza and beyond. If you've not seen her, blog, you should go in the little description there and finding it. But she writes how Israel hunts and executes Palestinian medics. Israel attacks on Palestinian medics are not new. They're an old Israeli policy on steroids. So, the Israeli army executed 15 Palestinian medics in Gaza, buried them, and lied about them being terrorists. For those paying attention, this barbarism is not new. Only the latest war crime committed by Israel with this litany of war crimes over the decades. They also tried to bury them to hide their crimes. The combination of the medics' hands being tied, executed, and buried in a mass grave was so horrific that even usually indifferent global media reported on it, albeit without the outrage that would have accompanied such reports with the perpetrator an enemy of the West. On March 31st, Jonathan Whitehall, the head of the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in the Occupied Palestinian Territory, otherwise known as OCHA, posted on X, first responders should never be a target, yet today, OCHA supported at Palestine RCS and GAZA Defense to retrieve colleagues from a mass grave in Rafah that was marked with the emergency light for one of their crushed ambulances. His thread went on to detail how a week prior, contact was lost with 10 Palestinian Red Crescent Society and 6 Defense First responders in 5 ambulances and 1 fire truck, who'd been dispatched to collect injured, noting, for days, OCHA coordinated to reach the site, but our access was only granted 5 days later. When they finally assessed the site, they recovered the buried bodies of 8 PRCS, 6 civil defense, and 1 UN staff. He wrote, noting, they were killed in their uniforms, driving their clearly marked vehicles, wearing their gloves, on their way to save lives. This should never have happened. Palestinian civil defense spokesperson Mahmoud Fasal separately said one of the civil defense crews had his feet tied, another had his clothes removed from his upper body, another was beheaded. Among all the martyrs, the least harmed had 20 bullets fired at him in his chest. According to the PRCS, a 9th EMT is missing and believed to have been detained. The UN, the Red Cross, and OCHA have all issued statements of outrage and condemnation of these murders. The FRC Secretary General Chagan Champagne said, they wore emblems that should have protected them. Their ambulances were clearly marked. They should have returned to their families. They did not. These rules of international humanitarian law could not be clearer. Civilians must be protected. Humanitarians must be protected. Health services must be protected. According to Champagne, 30 PRCS volunteers and staff have been killed since October 2023 alone. OCHA called the murders a huge blow to us and that these abhorrent acts require accountability. According to the UN, 408 aid workers, including more than 280 UNRWA staff, have been killed in Gaza since the war began on the 7th of October. UN Relief Chief Tom Fletcher wrote, they were killed by Israeli forces while trying to save lives. We demand answers and justice. The Guardian cites PRCS Dr. Bashar Murad, who spoke to one of the paramedics in the convoy. He informed us that he was injured and requested assistance, and that another person was also injured. A few minutes later, during the call, we heard the sound of Israeli soldiers arriving at the location, speaking in Hebrew, gather them at the wall and bring some restraints to tie them. This indicated that a large number of the medical staff was still alive. The Israeli Army media spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Nadav Shoshani, predictably denied Israel Army wrongdoing and blamed Hamas, claiming the ambulances were advancing suspiciously toward Israeli forces. He declared the execution of medics, some of whom's arms were bound, to be an elimination of a Hamas military operative, along with 8 other terrorists from Hamas and the Islamic Jihad. How many times have we heard that before? Observers on X rebuffed Shoshani, including pointing out that Israeli army had attacked ambulances for a very long time. Shoshani was indeed lying. Footage of the ambulances were found in one of the phones of the slaughtered medics. Footage clearly showed marked ambulances with lights flashing, not moving suspiciously, and coming under Israeli army fire. Eva can speak from personal experience. During January of 2009, Israeli war on Gaza, which began in late December, I was among a handful of international volunteers riding in PRCS ambulances to document their work and the victims they rescued. So Eva was right there in those vans with them. The first night of the Israeli land invasion, we were based in a PRCS center in Esbet Abad Rabo, east of Jabalia, with Israel shelling around us. By morning, we had to evacuate. By the end of the war, the center was nearly destroyed. But in terms of direct attacks on ambulance and hospitals, Eva can attest they occurred against unarmed medics and ambulances not carrying any Palestinian resistance, but retrieving wounded or killed Palestinian civilians, including elderly. In one instance, an Israeli sniper fired at least 14 shots at medics in the ambulance I was in, targeting the uniformed medics during supposed ceasefire hours, shooting one medic in the leg and shooting our ambulance. So she has footage, so we'll play that. One moment, please.
Elsewhere in Gaza, a different story from a different source. Spanish and Canadian human rights activists took these pictures showing medics rushing to collect a body. Shots ring out up to 13 times according to the crew. The medic has become the victim. The body they went to collect is left to lie on the road. They say one of the shots went through the head of the body and ricocheted into the leg of the medic. Since the war began, Palestinian medical sources say they've lost 21 staff to Israeli attacks. It contradicts Israeli claims that medical crews have not been targeted.
So this was back in 2009. You know, pretty standard war crime of that Israel tends to commit. But any thoughts so far, Care Bear?
I mean, you said it. It's a war crime. So,
yep.
What's going on? Like, how much more proof do we need in order to? I don't know.
Right. Like, I feel you, dude. Too much.
Just too much. Yeah.
So, a week prior, a medic Eva had accompanied one dangerous evening in the northwest of Gaza was killed the next day when the Israeli army fired a flechette shell dart bomb directly at the ambulance, shredding him with the razor-sharp darts, killing him. Survivors from the scene corroborated there was no resistance, only medics, and wounded and killed civilians. So that's what those flechettes are for. Usually fired at civilian vehicles or vehicles in general, you know, like not armored, right? Usually they're designed for like taking out vehicles, you know, they rip through like, you know, fuel lines and things like that. I mean, those will go through an engine block, like just the darts themselves. So, you know, fun times, I'm sure. Going through flesh, probably pretty easy for them. She later took testimonies from other PRCS medics who had been targeted by the Israeli army, some multiple times over the years, again in 2009. 2 medics told me how, after getting permission from Israel via the International Committee of the Red Cross to retrieve wounded and martyred, 3 ambulances and an ICRC jeep came under Israeli fire repeatedly in northern Gaza. We were driving to the area, speaking with the Israelis on the phone. They'd tell us which way to drive, what road to take. When we got near the wounded, Israeli soldiers started firing. I told them we have coordination, and they said to wait. Then they began firing at us again. According to the Palestinian Center for Human Rights, that same day, Israeli soldiers fired on a convoy of 11 ambulances led by a clearly marked ICRC vehicle in central Gaza, injuring an ICRC staff member and damaging the vehicle. Another medic was shot in his leg while on a mission for PRCS in May 2008 and was twice targeted by Israeli snipers during the 2009 war. He was also in a building that was being bombed while emergency workers tried to evacuate the victims. I was with Dr. Isa Saleh coming down from the stairs from the 6th floor of an apartment building in Jabalia, evacuating a martyr when the Israelites again shelled the building. They knew they were medics inside. They could see our uniforms and the ambulances outside. Dr. Salah was killed, his head decapitated by the bombing. The testimonies I took them then included many more cases of medics going to save injured Palestinians and coming under Israeli fire, preventing them from reaching those who needed help. In the article, I cited an article by Israeli journalist Amira Haas, who reported finding a note in Gaza ordering Israeli soldiers to open fire also upon rescue. In 2007, in the West Bank, during an Israeli invasion of Nablus, I saw Israeli soldiers taking a Palestinian medical relief volunteer who had been part of a group escorting civilians to their old city homes, hostage, blindfold and handcuff him and use him as a human shield. Back then, Eva wrote that targeted arrest and detention of medics is common and is a form of collective punishment for these volunteers providing essential emergency services to wounded Palestinians. When not arrested, medics and ambulances are still routinely denied access to emergency areas, denying the wounded emergency attention, a tactic which can result in the deaths of the injured. Fast forward to the 2023 and 2024, the over 1 year of Israeli ethnic cleansing of Gaza renewed now. The Israeli army repeatedly bombed hospitals throughout Gaza, invaded them, occupied and destroyed them, along with repeatedly killing medics, doctors, and emergency workers. It is clear that for Israeli soldiers, killing medical workers is Israeli policy, whether in ambulances or hospitals. It's also clear that while words of condemnation will be uttered, sometimes Israel is never held accountable for these crimes. It is apt to note here that Israeli allies, Ukraine, likewise targets to kill Russian medics and emergency workers, something Eva reported on after interviewing emergency workers in Donetsk. In January, I wrote about Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, a Palestinian doctor from northern Gaza abducted and imprisoned by the Israeli army last December. Being tortured, in that article I noted that 3 doctors from Gaza and Israeli prisons had already been tortured to death in the last year plus, and that there is grave concern for Dr. Abu Safia's life. Since then, other Palestinian hostages released from Israeli detention have confirmed Dr. Safia is being tortured. More recently, the Israeli Beersheba court has issued a 6-month administrative detention order for Dr. Hussam Abu Safia. Administrative detention being the means Israel used to illegally imprison Palestinians without charge. The abduction and torture of Palestinian doctors is another aspect of Israel's all-out attack on Gaza's health system. It is part of Israel's attack on Palestinians themselves, depriving them of life-saving care, part of the decades-long policy of killing Palestinians by every means possible, including by preventing the entry of medical equipment and food, starving Palestinians who escaped bombs and sniping. I will pose the same rhetorical question I posed ad nauseum. How would the international condemnation be if it was Russian point-blank assassinating uniformed unarmed medics? It would be non-stop 24/7 howling in corporate media, victims' faces and stories spoken of, demands for more sanctions. But Israel does this again and again, over the decades, and all Palestinians get are muted words of concern and calls for investigation, allowing Israel to continue slaughtering medics and emergency workers unabated. No justice. Back in 2009, the night of the Israeli land invasion, I wrote, Israel is bombarding Gaza once again, and the world is standing idly by, sitting on a fence very different from the fortified border fence encasing Gaza, or the separation wall dividing and ghettoizing the West Bank. The politicians of the world sit on the fence, justifying Israel's massacre of a civilian population already dying from the siege. The only change over 16 years is the ferocity and speed of Israel's murder of Palestinian rescuers and the population at large. Thoughts, Care Bear? Yep. Same shit week to week. Fucking Eva Wright, when the fuck does anything happen? You know? Like, you know, like ICJ shit. When's that going to take into effect? You know, any of that. We're waiting.
It's not. Let's keep it. It's not.
Well, yeah. So, is any foreign powers going to step in? Anything? Or would we just send them to Somaliland, I guess, and, you know, forget? Like, seems like it's the way it's going. Hopefully I'm wrong. But anyway, talking about these things are for sure why we're demonetized. Scan that QR code on your screen. Go to co-fi.com/indienewsnetwork. Leave us a little monetary support. We appreciate it. If you can't do that, like and subscribe. Share this video. It's one of the only ways people see them is by you sharing them. So get on that share button. Send it to your friends. Make sure to leave a comment. Allegedly that helps. You know? But otherwise, thanks for watching. All right. Well, to the chats, and then we get to your last one.
Yep.
Cool. Go-Start, I thought Johnny Tsunami was a Convo Couch friend. Jonathan Majorca on the ones and twos. They took that name from a Disney movie. That was on 90s Disney television. Very good. Very good film. There's two of them, I think. I think there's a sequel. Johnny Tsunami 2, something like that. I forget. Maybe I'm wrong. But what do we got over on the YouTubes?
They call the medics Hamas.
Yep. Bad cookies, geez, man. These war crimes will go unpunished. So, yeah, then bury the ambulances, say Dr. Nick. Yep. So, people rolling nat 20s on the perception. Good job. You see the dragon. Now what? But we send them more of our monies. ICJ has been delayed by Israel, who asked for another extension until January. Trial was scheduled for July. So that's the update on that. So I'm still not holding out hope for it. You'd think they'd do something. Even if that happens, I don't know what they do. You know? Like, unless people are willing to, like, they're already deemed war criminals by The Hague, so no one's arresting them yet. You know?
Right.
So, but anyway, you ready for our next one? I'm good.
Yep, so this will be quick, but I wanted to talk about this story. It went so under the radar, and this was reported a couple weeks ago, but obviously we weren't live last week, so I just wanted to kind of share this. This is just another case of doesn't matter if you're Palestinian, if you have dual citizenship, people do not give a damn about you. So, so this unfortunately is another case of that. This teen is from New Jersey, but is of Palestinian descent, and you know, and you can make the question, as he was living in the West Bank at the time of his martyrdom, you can question why he was there, but given that he is Palestinian, he had every right to be there. And more importantly, as an American citizen, they should have offered some type of protection and or assistance, you know, during, you know, when the IDF basically, you know, shot at him and killed him. So yeah, let's just play the news clip. This is from TRT World. But yeah, it's just sad that, again, another Palestinian-American who was born here getting no justice in terms of, you know, what Israel is doing, but again, no acknowledgement from, we saw this with Biden, and now we're seeing it especially more so with Trump, no recognition from our president's head leadership at all regarding this. So go ahead.
Muhammad Rabi', a Palestinian American, is grieving the unimaginable loss of his 14-year-old son, Amir. The boy was killed by Israeli forces while picking green almonds near his home in the village of Turmus Aya, north of the occupied West Bank. A horrific video captured the sound of over 30 bullets. Amir's body, riddled with gunfire, was held by the Israeli army before being returned to his family.
Relatives told me that Anwar was injured. We searched everywhere. I called the American embassy, begging for urgent help, but they kept asking for my passport number. Then Amir's. They called again to ask if he had a Palestinian ID. I told them he's injured. If you hurry, you might save his life. But it took too long. Then the Israeli forces confirmed his death.
Ayub Jbara, also Palestinian American, was with Amir at the time. He was shot 3 times, but managed to escape. He remembers everything.
We were just picking green almonds when the Israeli army suddenly opened fire on us. I was hit and my friend carried me to safety. We couldn't reach Amr. The gunfire was too intense. When the ambulance arrived, soldiers stopped it for half an hour. They interrogated me while I lay there, bleeding inside.
Ayub is now beginning a long journey toward recovery. Thousands of Palestinians hold U.S. citizenship. Yet, many face discrimination and danger in Israeli-controlled areas, as international protections are often ignored, putting both their safety and lives at risk. In the past 3 years, Israeli forces have killed 3 Palestinian Americans. Many say they are not treated equally and that their U.S. passports offer no protection. Saad Rabi' was previously arrested, said he received no official support.
I feel betrayed by the American government. We put our full trust in them, and we are American citizens.
That's
so
a mistake.
They shouldn't treat us less than any other American. And Trump, he's talking every day about the Israeli prisoners in Gaza, and these Israeli prisoners, they're not even American. I'm fully American. I was born in America. I lived in America. I went to school in America, and he's not even batting an eye on us and my brother.
Amir's dreams were buried with him. Around his grave, they gathered in mourning. The American flag was raised, a silent reminder that no one here is truly protected. Muhammad Alwan, TRT World, Ramallah, the occupied West Bank.
I mean, they're raising the American flag for this kid, which, like, I wouldn't even do, you know? Unfortunate.
I mean, each their own. But
no, I mean, I get it.
Yeah,
So,
but I think it's just more of a. I think that was just more of a fuck you, if anything else.
Yeah.
It was just more.
Oh,
of
no,
like,
it's a statement
like,
for sure.
No, this is an American. This is an American that is dead.
And we're willing to show him the fucking courtesy, you know?
Right.
Like.
So again, this teen, Amir, he grew up in New Jersey, very close to Indy. And given, like, and what, at least one of the senators who's from New Jersey, you would figure that Cory Booker, like with his Spartacus moment a couple of weeks ago, you would have thought that he would have mentioned anything regarding Palestine in his in what was it, like his speech, 24-hour speech that he gave a few weeks ago. Like, didn't mention anything about Palestine. But so actually I was kind of curious as to see if there was going to be any response from him at all, given this happened to a child that is from his home state. Well, Reef, guess what? There actually is a response from Cory Booker and Senator Kim.
Okay.
So yeah, you can yawn at this. So this is from NorthJersey.com, written by Katie Sobko, where she writes, Amir Rabi killing. New Jersey Senators Booker and Kim call on Trump administration to investigate. Not like offer any justice. Investigate.
Right. We investigated it.
That
they fucking did it.
Right.
Now what? You know?
So you put that aside. Anyway, so this will be a short article, but New Jersey's 2 U.S. senators have called on the Trump administration in a carefully worded letter, I'm sure, to investigate the fatal shooting of 14-year-old New Jersey boy Amir Rabi on April 6th in the West Bank. In a letter to President Donald Trump, Senator Cory Booker and Senator Andy Kim called Rabi's death another tragic example of the horrific human cost of the protracted conflict and the increasing tensions in the West Bank that continues to spiral.
No, just say Israel. Just say that. Just say that. Fucking quit pussyfooting around. Like, it's the conflict. It's Israel. Like, they are the ones committing the genocide. Anyway, continue. Sorry. Already stupid.
As New Jersey senators, we are calling for a thorough and transparent accounting of the facts and circumstances around Amir Rabi's death and the actions of Israeli security forces, the letter reads. We appreciate the difficult and dynamic nature of the situation, but also underscore our expectation that such an inquiry is possible and should be pursued when an American has died. As a result, we urge your administration to conduct a timely, independent, and transparent investigation into Amir Rabi's death, as well as Yorub Igara and Abed Shehada's injuries. Sorry, I'm pronouncing those names wrong. Shehada, 15, and Ibarra, 14, were also injured in the incident. Ijara, who was also born in New Jersey, is reported to be in critical condition. Booker and Kim said Rabi grew up in Saddlebrook and that his family moved to Turis Aya, a town where more than 80% of the population has dual American citizenship.
That's interesting.
They noted that many New Jersey residents have connections to Turis Aya and are personally impacted by the rise of violence in the West Bank that has occurred in recent years. We urge your administration to raise this case at the highest levels during meetings with counterparts in the Israeli government and the Palestinian Authority and press for full cooperation with a U.S.-led investigation, Booker and Kim said. They also call for U.S. embassy officials to visit the Rahib and Jabara families and ensure that they have all support they need during this difficult time, including urgent medical support. The IDF said in a statement that its troops opened fire during counter-terrorism activity in the area, killing one after identifying 3 terrorists who were throwing rocks at a highway with civilian vehicles and who pose a danger to civilians. Now, remember,
rocks.
These kids said they were picking almonds.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I guess apparently now throwing rocks is terrorism, I guess. almonds picking is terrorism, I guess. So yeah, like I said, I just wanted this to be quick, but again, I just felt it was, disgusting, obviously, given, but more importantly, just Booker's measly response, which was nothing. But the idea that Trump is going to do anything, yeah, he's not going to do anything. But then again,
Putin's a madman.
But then again, Biden didn't either, with a similar incident, which we also reported on a few months ago. But yeah, I just wanted to report on the story because it went under the radar and I felt it was important to share. So rest in power, Amir. We hope that your martyrdom will not be in vain. And once again, fuck Israel for all they're worth.
Yeah, exactly.
Free Palestine! From the river to the sea!
Well, talking about these things, definitely why we're demonetized, so you can go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork or scan the QR code on your screen, or it's in the description below. And just like and subscribe, hit the share button, leave a comment, do all the algorithmic things to help get us to new people. We appreciate it. And otherwise, thanks for watching. Yay, we did it.
We actually finished on time-ish, even though we did
3 stories.
So,
yeah.
So good time, and we started late.
Let me open this. Indy sent me this week's thing. So we've got Jesse tomorrow night, I do believe, with some home improvement. I can't read. Mandatory surveillance edition. But anyway, we got that. We got AM wake ups every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday over on the Twitters, as well as the independent review. We dual stream that for them. But you'll see a replay in case you can't make Thursday of that American tradition. And I don't know if Indy's doing How Do We Miss That Sunday. I think he plans to, or at least I thought so. He'll let me know in chat. But he might have had something come up again, but we'll see. Otherwise, tune in Wednesday, same bad time. Same bad channel. So you can go to indienewsnetwork, find all the links to all the channels. If you want to go find us on our Rumble, the INN newsletter, of course, you can go check that out as well. Coming to a Substack and all that. Anything else? So
no, thank you, guys. We hit 150 episodes, so that's a big deal. So thank you guys for joining us on this ride. Yes, it's been
How Do We Miss That
crazy
on
3
Sunday.
years.
So,
okay, so yeah, thank you guys for watching us. And next week will be my birthday week.
Yay!
So come celebrate with me here next week.
Yeah. Do it up.
Hopefully, maybe we can do. Hopefully, we can do some fun stories. Probably not.
We'll see what the cards give us.
We'll see. Bad Cookie said, "Why are you always in a rush to leave us, Collin and Reef?" Look, it's almost midnight for me.
Yeah,
I'm tired.
He got to teach little babies tomorrow, dude. The babies need the sleeps for him to not drop kick one. Like, y'all dealt with kids. Y'all know you need every bit of patience you can get. But anyway. All right. Speaking of kids, remember, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a great week, everyone.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Bye, have a great time.